Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Beyond the Billboard. I'm Charlie Riley, head of marketing at OneScreen, who's powering this podcast, joined by our co-founder and chief commercial officer, Greg Wise, who's also my co-host. You've got all the C words or the co-prefixes, but we're thrilled to have Elaine Zelby on, awesome guest who's got a lot of great opinions about marketing and just a lot of random thoughts, she said. So I think hopefully we'll get into some of those that she's going to share with us. But she's the co-founder and CRO of Tofu, helping a lot of marketers figure out top of funnel. And Elaine, you can give a little bit of your backstory and probably talk about Tofu a little bit better than I did. But awesome product. Check it out. We'll drop some links at the end of this. But Elaine, we're thrilled to have you. Maybe just if you could give a little bit of background to the listeners, and then we can get into some fun topics.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. And also, funny story, my title up until very recently on LinkedIn was Chief Spear Fisherwoman because titles are dumb. So people loved that. I was thinking the year one of a company is literally spearfishing, especially if you're doing enterprise. So it was fun. People liked it. I changed it because it was confusing people, but that was my original actual C-level title. My backstory is extremely random and nonlinear. And I always joke to people that I have no North Star, and that's just who I am and how I operate. I started my life as a biomechanical engineer doing med devices, thought I was going to go down that path, very quickly realized how painfully slow that world is. Hardware is hard. FDA regulated hardware is even harder. Did a pretty hard pivot into enterprise software. Joined as one of the earliest employees of a company selling to CIOs. So I got a really quick crash course in true enterprise software. Spent about 5 years there growing the company from 0 to over 100 people. And then did a stint at Slack when they were launching their enterprise product to lead enterprise marketing. And through these experiences, had gotten to know a bunch of VCs. So ended up finding myself as a venture capitalist. So I spent 5 years after that as a partner at a VC firm called Signal Fire. And Signal Fire is a very interesting VC in that they have a very data-driven approach and take this view of investing at the intersection of artificial intelligence and software. And so I had looked at a ton of companies in the AI space. I had actually built my first generative AI product in 2018 that could turn any blog into a podcast called SoundSpot. And I was following the trend for a while. So a little over 2 years ago, saw the writing on the wall that this is where the puck was going and decided to make the leap and start Tofu with two co-founders.
I understand that leap, and it's a big one. It's a big one.
It was a long time coming. It's a great fit for me. We'll put it that way. I'm a horrible employee. I pretty much have been my whole career. Probably should have started a company earlier.
You're also solving a problem that I'm quite certain every single marketer that's listening to this or will listen to this is having a problem with. Find me the marketer that doesn't have a problem with it, with filling the top of the funnel. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think things are really changing when it comes to demand. Somebody, I actually don't know him. He had a fantastic post yesterday on LinkedIn he was the CMO of a large company and he's taking a break and was just talking to a bunch of people. And he's like, the state of the world right now is so effed. He was like, went through every single person. He's like, SEO people don't know what to do. Paid people dumping more money down. Product marketers are like, my entire job is now a prompt. Content marketers are threatened. All of these different people. So I think the entire marketing landscape is shifting a lot. And actually, this will come up as part of the conversation, but people really are shifting towards in-person and brand because those are the things that feel tangible, differentiated, and actionable right now. And it's just interesting to see how people are coping with it. And right now, because we're in such early days of this change, everyone is on different ends of the spectrum. You see people who are really leaning in and then people who are absolutely terrified and not making changes yet.
I can't blame the people that are scared to jump in or even the ones that are jumping in but have no idea what even brand means. Because why would they have had to know? The past decade has been this era of performance marketing only, right? Creativity has basically been stripped from the marketing role and now it's back. And a lot of these marketers are not trained for that. So we know we need to make a change, but we don't really know what it means. What does brand mean to you?
Oh, I love this question because this is something I think people don't talk about enough. Yeah. To me, brand is planting a stake in the ground on what you want to be known for and who you want to be known by. And I think that is the biggest piece is brand is intentional. Brand is, this is us defining who we want to be known as. And what stems from that is a lot of other stuff. The actual way to build brand is more of the tactics, but what your brand is extremely intentional and should be extremely thoughtful. And I think that's the step that people skip. They go to the tactics without defining the what. And I think that in today's world too, there's more companies doing every possible permutation of anything than ever. So defining how you're different, defining what you want to be known as, defining how you want people to see you in the market is more important than it ever has been.
I love that definition. And I know you're right. Like, people do skip a step. And I think you talked a little bit about starting with the who, but being intentional about that who that you're trying to talk to and what you want them to think of you, like that proverbial when you're not in the room and what they say. I guess, can you talk through that a little bit of your process? So for marketers that are listening who have maybe skipped that step, like, maybe how can they go back to that? Or like, how do you maybe pause the tactics and say, like, are you really thinking through how you are intentionally building what your brand wants to be?
You mentioned the who, and this is where I see people fall down so much is everyone wants their ICP to be their TAM, and that is just not the case. Depending on the stage and maturity of your company, your TAM should be very narrow in the beginning. It's okay to experiment and to try to figure out where is the biggest pull, but what I see go wrong so much is we want to sell to anybody that wants to buy, or oh, well, this is a shiny object, or this market looks good, so let's go and try to do it all. I'll kind of walk you through really where we are today. When we started, we were very intentional. We sell to B2B. Consumer companies would ask us, can you also do consumer? We have the same problems. We said, no, we are only B2B. Now, we knew B2B. We knew we wanted to sell to software companies at the beginning because, quite frankly, I don't understand non-software. I talked to the CMOs of like McKesson and Fannie Mae and Colliers, and we might as well have been speaking different languages. I had no idea what they were talking about. So we had that at least as the very wide bounds. And then once we started talking to people, once we started actually selling the product, once we started seeing usage, then we started narrowing. That was what industries are good fits, what types of buyers are good fits, what types of champions are good fits, and then what size of company. So for us, we've just been more narrow as we get more mature, which is interesting. I think at some point, once you hit true product market fit and acceleration through that growth phase, you can start widening it a little bit. One of my favorite stories of this, though, is especially when you sell a horizontal product like we do, most people think that, oh, you just sell horizontal from day one. But one of my favorite stories is DocuSign. People think of DocuSign as a very generic document signing company, right? Very horizontal. They started in commercial real estate, super narrow. They understood, here's the process of signatures, here's the order of operations that have to happen, here's the different platforms they use, here's the different players, the different personas, and they nailed that. And then they went to adjacent areas. So I think it was other types of real estate or things that mimicked commercial real estate. And over time, they became this generic horizontal product. But that's not how they started. But we don't hear that story. We just jump to the public company that sells horizontal software. And I think starting at that really narrow piece is key. So now once you understand the very narrow who, then it's the time to say, okay, what are they saying? What is the language that we're hearing? What are the pain points that they're expressing? And then what are they telling us about competition? How do we go and plant our stake in the ground saying, here's what we do and here's what we don't do? And, for us, one of the things that we really cared a lot about was rebundling this MarTech stack. That is the end vision, the end goal is there's so many different tools doing all these point solutions. Your teams are fragmented, your data is siloed. How do we go and rebundle that? So for us, it's really important that people see us from day one as a platform, a bundled platform. Yeah. We don't want to be known as just an ABM tool. We don't want to be known as a content gen tool. And so if you look at our messaging, if you look at the things that we do, it's really a lot around this don't go use 27 tools. How do we go and serve your entire team? And here's what we do for each of the members of your team, but here's how it ties together. So our messaging is a lot around integrated campaigns, omni-channel, contextual experiences for your prospects and for your customers. And I think through that, it's helped define that brand. Now, I think there's the what you say, and then there's the more how you make people feel.
Yeah.
And this is where I think right now we're still defining that. Most enterprise software is really boring. I don't want to be really boring. Our name is Tofu. We can have a lot of fun. And I love when I see brands, I think Gong is a great example of this. They had a fun brand in a boring category, or like a, enterprise category. They had fun colors. They had a fun logo. They had just fun things they were doing. It wasn't consumer. They didn't jump the shark and go that direction, but they made it feel still authentic and still something that a buyer would get excited about, but they had fun with it. And so I think that's where you start to have to define do you want people to feel fun and empowered? Do you want people to feel afraid? Like if you're in cybersecurity, do you want them to feel like you are the biggest, baddest company to block all the threats. Maybe that's the better brand as opposed to having a fun, playful brand. So I think it has to match the, what you want people to feel. But I think that's the other piece that's really important. It's the what you say and then how you make people feel. And from that, then it stems everything else.
The how you make people feel piece is so critical. I spent a bulk of my early career at HubSpot. That was, like Gong, like you just described. It was the orange. It was the kind of fun, bright, happy, that was like the brand. The brand was everything. But it came out through the content. It came out through the videos. It came out through the blog posts. It came out through the sales collateral. And then also the employees. Like we also kind of embodied that, like that brand. So it's like, it's top down or inside out. It's everything. Like everyone has to be on board. It's interesting though, because you kind of can't go back sometimes, right? It's like if you go and you launch to the world, like this is who we are, it's tough. And you hear about the rebrands and sometimes they don't go well. So it's really important to think about how you want people to feel, to your point.
I have two things on this. So this is my favorite example. So HubSpot has Inbound, big annual conference. Sure. Salesforce has Dreamforce, their big annual conference. Historically, up until this year, they were at the same time. And I've been to both. They could not feel more different.
Yeah.
They're literally now at this point, behemoth, CRM, marketing cloud companies, all that stuff. You walk in and there's a feeling and it is so pervasive. And they, to your point, HubSpot, fun, light, just felt airy, energized. Dreamforce is more, I hate to use the term, but old school. It feels buttoned up. It feels, yes, exactly. And that's indicative of the two brands. So exactly. Perfect example.
It is. It's funny you say that. One is like suit and tie and one is like, cargo shorts and t-shirt.
Yes.
But I think what you said there, Greg, was important. There's its brand is consistency. And I think marketers love to create terms for everything, but like employee advocacy is one of those parts that I think was over the last 10, 15 years has come into having your employees be part of your branding and you're part of your marketing team. But I think that point about being consistent has to reign through. Like Elaine, like you're saying, HubSpot's brand that they show outside of Inbound carries through to Inbound. And as you walk in, you get that it's consistent with everyone you talk to, with just how they use things. It's interesting though, how you shared before though, not every company should focus on brand marketing. And I think that's a little contrarian when you think about the shift back to brand marketing, and you hear everyone talk about now, like brand marketers are having their day, but you think that maybe there are some companies that shouldn't focus on that. I guess why do you think that? And do you have maybe any examples of the types of companies that shouldn't focus on brand marketing right now?
This is definitely a little bit of a more contrarian view. To me, it really is about who are you selling to and what moves the needle for them. Certain people are going to be much more compelled by brand marketing. Certain personas and certain types of people are going to be way less. For example, developers actually do care, right? Shockingly, right? They don't want to feel marketed to, but they love the brands that have the fun characters and the mascots and all that kind of stuff. They like feeling part of a community. And honestly, that is an extension. An example, one of my first companies that I joined, the first startup, we sold to these CIOs at very large enterprises. They, quite frankly, could not have cared less. You know what they did care about? FaceTime. We did the most successful campaigns we ran. It was actually a fun one. We did dinners at a CIO's house where we would bring in a chef and a cleaning crew, and we let them invite around 10 of their peers in that city and the spouses. And we just had this in-person, super intimate dinner. Now, every single one of them would take a call afterwards, but were we doing anything branded to it? Absolutely not. Afterwards, it was literally just getting on calls. I think for that persona, what mattered to them was a couple things. One, they care about things like peers and analysts. That is something that's important to them. I would go and invest in analyst relationships. I would go and invest in building up maybe like an advisory board or things like that. Great example of a company that nailed this was Aptio. They created this advisory board of the top CIOs, which literally exploded the company and took them public. So I think it really just depends on the persona that you're selling to. I think it also depends on the category. If you are in a category that is exceptionally crowded, having some form of brand is by far the biggest differentiation you can have. I keep joking to people, I don't believe there's any technical moats to be had anymore. Even OpenAI does not have a technical moat. At this point, everyone is just leapfrogging each other. They have a $300 billion cash moat potentially, but do I think they truly have a technical moat? No, I don't think so. But they do have a brand moat. They do have, now cash. So brand in a competitive category, I think can move the needle. But ultimately, it kind of comes back to the beginning of this conversation of really think about the who and what matters to them. And then from there, plant your stake in the ground saying, who do we want to be? And some of that will span into what we think of as brand campaigns. But to be honest, no company cannot have a brand. That's just not even a possibility. Even if you don't intentionally activate it in the ways that we think of, every single company still has a brand.
Yeah, it might be negative that you you don't put the effort into building that brand, and you're still going to have one, like you said. It's just going to be negative, or it's not going to be something that you can control. And I think a lot of maybe don't understand that it's not just that one marketer's job to build your brand. It's back to the employee advocacy, back to someone sharing something online, like that all contribute. Bet your email signature is looking the same. Like those are all the little things that add up to what your brand looks like. And as quickly as you get back to someone from a sales call, like that could be negative or it could be positive, but it's all within your control, or some of it's within your control. Greg, I guess I was going to ask, that's an awesome dinner idea. Does that count as out of home? I know we like to count out of home as a lot of things. Like that's an interesting execution there.
Yeah. Out of home does come in a lot of shapes and sizes. Sure. If it's in the real world and maybe someone at the dinner is wearing a shirt or something that has a logo on it. Absolutely.
There's a mobile truck outside, like then, yeah, for sure. But
well, it's interesting, Elaine. So it's interesting because Charlie and I talk about this with every guest we have, which is, I think part of the brand challenge is it's not something that is measurable the next day. And that
Correct.
is fundamentally different than how, again, I'm sort of calling out like these performance marketers that, for the past decade have really become like financial analysts from my perspective. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like I left HubSpot, went into commercial real estate, came back to the tech world for one screen, started talking to marketers. I said to my co-founder, like, when did marketing become a finance position? Like, this is refreshing dashboards and looking at Excel spreadsheets. And now it's that conversation of, well, brand is long-term, but long-term for a CEO or for investors is frightening, right? Yeah. It's like, yes, that the long-term outcome of this business, but we need revenue now. We need to hit our goals now. I think that's where like the breakdown is.
Well, on that point, so this is also interesting, and I think what's feeding this, to be honest, if you look at the average tenure of a CMO or also a CRO, it's less than 18 months. So at any tech company. And that also means that every single person that's coming into the role is terrified of not staying in the role, which means making bets that they won't even see pay off for 18 months is not getting them to their goal. And everything is about understanding human incentives. And their incentive is keep my job.
That's right.
And to keep their job, the CEO cares about demand gen. They care about revenue. They care about those type of things. They don't care about brand awareness and things like that. They want it to turn into numbers. Will that turn into numbers? Yeah, I 100% believe so, but potentially after they leave. And I think that's part of the disconnect between why people aren't maybe putting as much emphasis on it as they should.
To me, the pendulum is shifting. Well, not even to me. I mean, look, our job is to talk to marketers every day. It's happening because, there's not one marketer that I talk to at a B2B high growth SaaS company or even a B2C digitally native challenger brand, a retail brand, anything that says our entire digital marketing stack is working really well. Everything is going swimmingly. Unit economics, never been better. Chef's kiss. Not one person. Because if they were, I wouldn't be having the conversation about out of home, right? But stick to what you're doing. But not one in 2 years. And so it's shifting. But what's difficult is like we're in this purgatory where you have the brands who have figured it out. They realize brand is important. And out of home is a tactic. It's a part of building a brand when you're ready, right? Because those things that you just talked about, evoking some sort of a feeling to your persona and making sure that you're targeting your persona, A billboard with the right creative, in my opinion, a little bias, does that better than anything on the planet. That is you mentioned stake in the ground. It's literally a stake in the ground, right? With a sign on it. And it says like, here's who we are, is a big pillar of brand that we're seeing, amongst other things.
That billboard though, and the digital out of home signage,
sure,
and the email and the meta ads, they should all get credit for a slice of turning that into a close one deal that turns to revenue. And the
integrated campaigns. We'll keep singing this. Integrated campaigns.
It's every marketer knows it though. But this is the thing.
Yeah.
Every marketer knows it. It's not about convincing marketers. It really isn't. It's about convincing everyone else that they have to convince at the org.
That's back to what Elaine said there.
And execution.
But I think part of that is understanding the marketing maturity that they have to sell up, so that point about saving their job or keeping their job, they need to feel that out to say the CEO understands it's an investment here. If they're using the term sunk cost, or they're using like, how much is this campaign going to waste or use, you're in a tough spot. And I think that's where you are going to make bad decisions to retain as much of that 18 months that you can have as in that role, because you are not going to win when you are thinking about an all-encompassing campaign. It's to give credit to all those different things that go into it. And especially now that buyers' cycles are different and there's so much information that somebody's already doing before they're going to make that decision to not even want to talk to a salesperson. You don't control that sales process anymore. They do. And like, we're trying to attribute the old way of giving credit to all those steps that we like to see. Like, we would love for you to follow our path. Like, here's our funnel, but that's not how it works. And I think there is a disconnect there between who gets credit for what and how, like, back to, I forget how you framed it, Elaine, but the human thought process of like how they're compensated and how they're incentivized. If it's not tied to that, there's conflicting ways about how everything is built.
Oh my goodness. Don't even get me started on this, both like attribution and incentives. I'm actually dealing with probably one of the most frustrating buying experiences I've ever had with a very large company that we all know. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I am a customer. I am trying to give them more money and upgrade. I have a few questions. The rep or the SDR, whatever he is, trying to get me on a call. I do not want to call. I literally had a couple questions. Answer my questions. Will not answer the questions. Want to get me on a call. Don't want to get on a call. Ask to have his boss looped in. Then everyone's unresponsive. No one will talk to me. It is just like mind-blowing that. And then I went on chat and the chat people were like, talk to your rep. I'm like, I'm trying to talk to my rep.
Shit.
So it is like one of those things where I'm literally trying to give you more money. Please help me. Like,
that's
help
because
me help you.
It's what's in it for them and not what's in it for the customer.
Because I'm sure, well, and to get back to the point, I'm sure it is because my SDR or rep or whatever he is comped on the meeting. Yep. It's not on the outcome. He was comped on having that meeting with me. And because of that, we are completely misaligned in incentives. And that is a true thing based off of where you place the incentive completely changes behavior. I ran an SDR team before. I learned that lesson so fast. At Tofu, I have a very non-traditional structure in terms of compensation. Every single person on go-to-market is comped variably. I am more than happy to triple pay for marketing commission, SDR commission, and AE commission on any deal. Why? Because that aligns incentives so nicely. Marketing is comped on first meetings that happen. SDRs are comped on second meetings because first meeting, the salesperson still has to take it, which means it falls under our agreed upon ICP. Second meeting means it was good and qualified. Third, and then sales is comped on revenue. So now I'm truly trying to align people one step ahead of where they typically would be comped, but I'm making it okay to triple pay because, again, we all win together. It is our margins and our cost structure and our CAC is such that is okay at our company. Everyone has to figure that out for themselves, but people don't think about what is the best experience for the buyer and how do I align our internal incentives to actually follow the buyer as opposed to our process.
And that's a brand thing, because if you go back to what we started talking about, that's That's putting, I've heard this analogy about like brand is all the deposits that happen into like a bank or whatever, but that's a negative deposit that in your mind, and now you didn't share the name, but you just shared that with everyone that's listening to this. That's a negative brand exposure that you've had with this brand. I'm like,
totally.
That's not a marketing thing. Marketing that's not an ad that they ran. That's not a billboard. That's not a campaign. That is misalignment with sales to understand that we need to put the customer first. And, I'm sure their mission statement's all about, we care about the customer more than anything. Well, no, it's not, because your brand doesn't align with that. And you have now a negative brand exposure to that. And if you have enough of those, you already said you're a customer, there's a good chance you're going to be talking to someone else. Or when that other brand that's put enough positive investments into your bucket and they communicate with you at the right time, or you see the right ad driving down the thruway, that makes you consider like maybe it's time for a switch. And I think it kind of comes back to the whole brand thing. And it's all these little things add up to what you want that person to experience.
You know, it goes back to, so Elaine, I mean, that's a whole other podcast episode on comp structures, because like what you just walked through is progressive. And I think it's in a good way. I mean that in a good way, in a positive way. And I think it goes back to marketing is fundamentally changing. Sales is fundamentally changing. How people buy is fundamentally changing. And there are some people who kind of refuse to explore or help build the new playbook, right? Yeah. They're still like holding on to that 2010 to 2020 playbook, which kind of sounds like this sales org that you're working with is still like built on, because like that is such a no, right? Like anyone with a pulse who was like on the front lines at all would know that buying experience is absolutely like the wrong way to go. And so I think it goes back to marketing too. So like we're in this purgatory, everything is changing. So, and consumers are smart. We're smart, right? People who buy they know at this point. We've been through. We know the salespeople. We know the sales playbook, the SaaS sales playbook. Like I worked for the guy who like wrote it, right? Mark Roberge. He's like the pioneer, brilliant guy, right?
He's an investor.
He's great awesome. Guy. He's the man and brilliant. And some of the initial tactics that worked then don't necessarily work now. So comp structures, all sorts of stuff is changing, Elaine. Please come back. Let's talk about all the above.
Anytime. I can always jam on this stuff. We even touch on attribution. I have so many thoughts there. We'll deal with that one later.
Well, we can start that off with your airport out-of-home ideas, because we didn't even get to that. But that can be on the next one for sure. We really appreciate you joining. Like,
do you want to hear two really quick ones?
I do.
Sure. Yeah. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
These will be quick. Okay. Immediate. Like literally, this is like just coming to my mind when you said this. Number one. Right now in remote work, who's still traveling the most? Big consultants. If you sell to large consulting firms, I would go and find the travel patterns of where they're sending the most people. And I would actually do things that literally had the logos of every major consulting firm, McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, Wipro, all that kind of stuff, and have that. So it's very eye-catching, but go and know who your audience is. So they're already going to be in the airports very frequently. They're going to see it over and over again. Second one, which is a little creepier, is for very large organizations. Typically at this point, they're going to have people over, but they will do some kind of annual get the whole team together in a place. If you can figure out when that is and you want to sell to them, go and blanket the airport where they will all be coming into for that week with your brand and your ads. Those would be two fun ones.
Those are really good use cases. So to your point is audience plus context and moments. Yeah. That's it. You just covered off on
relevance.
And relevance. That's it. Those 4 pillars. That's everything. I mean, there really isn't another channel you could do that with. So for other marketers, and you know who can help you execute that campaign? Us. That wasn't a trick question.
Well, again, it's like the whole thing that we're trying to do is create contextual, relevant digital experiences. And that is literally trying to pair in the physical world with the digital world, but make things relevant, make things contextual, and make things on the right channel where the user wants to consume the content. And part of the channels is out of home. So 100% agree. And that's exactly what we're trying to do too.
Elaine, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Where can folks find you?
TofuHQ.com is our website, and you can find me on LinkedIn primarily. I'm there a lot. Come say hi. I'm friendly and extremely responsive, almost too much so. I have trouble not responding to people. That's a failure of mine, but working on it.
You're a good person and you share a lot of great stuff. So don't apologize for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Everyone check out her content, connect with Elaine, and look for my esteemed co-host here, Charlie, and myself. Thanks for joining another episode of Beyond the Billboard. We'll see you on the next one, folks.
Thanks for having me.